I don't know about you, but I think that teaching as a profession leans towards the conservative. It shouldn't come as a surprise. We become, I think, incredibly risk averse, and so the other way. Thanks, Nick. This is my focus for the day. One of the things that holds us back as a profession, I think, is our fear of making mistakes. The kind of bureaucratic structure that wraps itself around teaching, which is a legacy of its old public service days, is still very strong. You get ahead by doing the right thing and not making too many waves. I just want to reflect on that a little bit this morning, and I've picked on the notion of volcanoes. They're a naturally frightening phenomenon if you've ever stood on or near one. But mine are on a much smaller scale. Hands up those who've made plaster cones for volcano demonstrations. Okay, let me tell you a story that goes way back to my history as a teacher when I was actually at college. I was on prac at what used to be St Anne's at Bondi doing a Year 4 prac. And I thought I'd seen this demonstration in the days when you could still use potassium permanganate and magnesium wire, which is a definite no-no these days. Please do not do this at home. I actually fell at the first hurdle. So I had organised, I thought, the kids to bring the plaster and the chicken wire and the boards and everything. And somehow when the great day arrived, we managed to scrabble together enough for 3 or 4 cones. And so out to the playground we went, which I thought would be safe enough. And by about an hour and a half in, every kid was looking like the abominable snowman. The playground looked like a ski field, and we had some pretty deformed looking volcanoes. At which point the principal happened by. And I was in the Christian Brothers at that stage and living in community. All he said was, off you go to your next thing. I had something else to do. I'll look after this. I didn't know where the brooms were, the hoses were. I had no idea. Anyway, he somehow got the kids dusted down. He cleaned up the playground, and I was expecting the rocket of all times. Over dinner that night, the only thing he said was, "Did you learn anything today? Did you learn anything today?" I didn't need anybody to tell me the 25 different ways I'd stuffed up. I just needed somebody to ask me to think about what I'd done. So, even though I was probably oblivious to the risk, I took a bit of a risk. I thought, I can manage this. It went dreadfully pear-shaped, but it was a formative experience for me. The kids eventually learned something, and I think I became a better teacher as a consequence. However, I wasn't perfect. Several years later, I was actually lecturing at a teacher's college. And I was doing a bit of a demonstration lesson, and I thought I'd reprise an old success. And so, but I couldn't be bothered making a plaster cone. So I thought I'd take a shortcut. And I made a cone with alfoil, and I had this really heavy-duty ceramic container that I was going to put these really hot chemicals in. So we got set up in the room, and I put newspaper around to catch the ash which was going to eventuate, and I made a big deal about safety. I'd stand back, be very careful, lit the blue touch paper, stood back, and there was this almighty crack, and there were flames all over the newspaper because the egg cup that I was using had smashed in the heat. Moral of that story is, you've never got it down pat. You weren't there for that, were you, Jan? Thank God, no witnesses. All right, so the point about it is, okay, you've got to take a chance, and even when you don't think you're taking a chance, you might be. The reason I want to focus on this is, you, by virtue of the fact that you're here today, are obviously keen, committed, imaginative teachers. The presentations we're going to see today are going to be testament to that. What really worries me, that is, in an environment of increased accountability, we're going to end up in a situation where we're so afraid of taking risks that we stop growing. And if we stop growing as teachers, our kids will stop growing. So lesson one, I think, from my volcano experience is if we don't take chances, we're not going to improve. So the fact that you're putting yourself out in front of your peers today, that's, I hope, going to be a wonderful growth promoting experience. The ideas you collect today that you will try, I know, when you go back, will be terrific for your kids. That's the cutting edge of growth. So somehow get around the bureaucratic constraints, get around the compliance. I thought that the quotation in today's prayer about "do not be conformed to this world" was a very apt one for this kind of circumstance. Having said all of that, I'm not encouraging wild abandon. So take all due precautions, even if in the end they prove, like my newspaper, to be actually more like fuel than safety. So it is okay to wear a safety helmet. Put in place the kinds of structures that mean you've got a plan B, that you've got a fallback. And of course, we're not always talking about physical dangers. It might just be that a lesson goes awry, and that'll happen. So wear your safety helmet. And this is why days like today are so important. It's okay to take a risk for yourself, but help others to do the same. So when you're working with younger teachers, don't work on getting them to conform to this world, work on getting them to open up to possibility. When you're working with teams, back each other up, make it possible to take time to do some creative thinking. So help others to take that risk. And of course, in the end of it all, it's an incredible adventure, and unless you embark on it, unless you take the chance, you won't know the exhilaration of success. I think what we're going to see today is an incredible range of exhilarated people. Thanks for coming today, and I'll see you at the end of the day when we say our formal thanks.